Story time. My boyfriend and I bought a very old house. He was in charge of bringing in all the furniture and doing the heavy lifting while I was on wallpaper removal duty. The previous owner had papered every wall and ceiling. Removing it took ages but was oddly satisfying, kind of like peeling skin when you get sunburnt. I started peeling the paper away and discovered that under a corner section of paper in every room was a person's name and a date. Curiosity got the better of me, and one night I googled the names. I discovered that the person was actually a missing person, and the missing date matched the date under the wallpaper. We immediately notified the police and they sent out a crime scene team. After looking around a bit, they came up to me and said, "Where's the wallpaper you removed from the walls?" Turns out, it wasn't wallpaper. I'm done.
If you ever want to wear a wig, don't do what she did. Talia bought a wig one day that didn't fit, but instead of returning it, she did something that quickly became terrifying. She came up with an unusual idea. This was her first mistake. She searched for ways to alter the wig herself. Then she went into her mother's room, took out a sewing kit, and began working. But Talia actually decided to put the wig on first and sew it in front of a mirror. She thought this would make sure the size was perfect. Afterwards, she was actually really satisfied with the result. Then that night, Talia went to take the wig off, but the wig seemed to feel much tighter than before. But she had school early tomorrow, so with one pull, she took the wig off. Then, without looking, she put it in her closet. That night, she woke up to a wet sound ringing in her ear. She tried to go back to sleep, but realized that her dog had come onto her bed. She pet her dog and went back to sleep. It wasn't a big deal. But the next morning, she noticed something strange in her closet. The wig didn't look the way it did before. It was covered in pieces of blood and skin. Then Talia went into the bedroom and turned around. She realized that she had sewn her own scalp into the wig, then ripped it off. In the back of her head, she could see her own skull. Then she realized why there was a wet sound ringing in her ears last night, and she began screaming. This man's wife left him, but not for the reasons he thought. Once there was a couple who just got married in Paris. They were very happy together, but the wife had one secret she didn't tell her husband yet. She had a birthmark on her face. She'd been wearing makeup to cover it, but she thought once she showed her husband, she would know whether he truly loved her. So after they got married, she took off her makeup and showed him. He was surprised, but he wasn't going to let that change anything. However, the next morning, his wife was gone. Her husband thought that she must have felt upset due to how surprised he looked when he saw her birthmark. Or maybe she had second thoughts. After months of getting no reply, he finally gave up on trying to look for her. He was heartbroken, but after a few years, he got a new job in a different city. He wanted a fresh start in life, but things didn't go as planned. He came across a strange-looking circus called the House of Oddities. This made him very curious, so he went in, but what he saw inside would shock him. Among the other circus acts, he saw a twisted woman rocking back and forth, looking terrified. He screamed as he recognized the birthmark on her face.
I am going to be telling you a scary childhood story. When I was 2 years old, my mom passed away. My dad wasn't in the picture, so I went to go live with my grandparents. My grandparents lived in a super old home that was built in the 1800s. I was a very imaginative child. So when I told my grandparents that I used to see people in the house, they just didn't believe me. There was one lady in particular that I would always see. She would sit at the end of my bed and watch me fall asleep. I wasn't scared of her because I thought she was an actual person. Plus, I was super little, so nothing even crossed my mind. At this point, I was like 4 or 5 years old. I remember her talking to me constantly. She even sang me the song Rockabye Baby to get me to go to bed one night. Every single day when I would get home, I could see her in my window. At that point, I thought she was just waiting for me. She just wanted to be my friend, right? But as I got older, things started to get really weird between me and her. She wasn't this nice lady anymore. Stay tuned for part 2.
Do you style your hair the same way every day? Well, there's an urban legend about a woman who always wore her hair in a bun, but for her, this habit would lead to something terrifying. This woman loved wearing her hair in a bun, but she might have taken it a bit too far. She didn't want to style her hair differently or even take out her bun to clean her hair. Whenever she took a shower, she would just wear a shower cap to make sure the water didn't mess up her bun. At night, she would sleep with a towel around her hair so the bun didn't move. After a while, she had to put hairspray in it to mask the smell. Then her scalp started feeling itchy, so she would put more hairspray in it. Even when the itching got intense, she just applied more hairspray. But her husband finally found out about how bad the situation had gotten when he woke up one day and his wife was still asleep. He tried to wake her up, but she wouldn't move. She had died in the middle of the night. The husband called the police, fearing that something unusual might have happened. But when her body was examined, they finally took out her bun. Inside her hair, they found something terrifying. They found a huge spider had gotten into her hair, made a nest, and laid eggs. When the baby spiders hatched, they bit through her skull and ate her brain.
why you should be really careful how you treat people, and also why you should stick up for people. When I was in 8th grade, I was really good friends with this kid named Damon. Me, him, and this other friend of mine, we were all at the same table in English class. We would joke around, talk about the same TV shows and movies. We were the loudest group by far. But near the end of the school year, Damon ended up moving. And it really sucked, but we said goodbye to Damon, who I should tell you was this small, short, funny, wisecracking kid. Didn't matter what you threw at him, he was super witty. So we said goodbye to him, we all went to 9th grade. It was either the end of 9th grade or the middle of sophomore year that I saw Damon again. He had transferred back to our school, saw him at a pep rally, and I was sitting by myself because I despise pep rally. He was like, Josadak, do you remember me? I was like, oh my gosh, David? He was so much taller, face looked different, his voice was deeper. This was obviously a different kid, but really happy to see me. So we started talking, catching up. Then I started noticing that he was getting hit in the back of the head with tiny paper balls. He wasn't even flinching. I looked behind me to see 3 boys throwing paper balls at him. What? Dude, do you see what they're doing? Yeah, I'm used to it. What? This was not the same witty boy that I knew. Oh god, I'm running out of time. Watch part 2 to see my...
This is why you should never ask too many questions. Once there was an old lady who was widowed and wheelchair bound, living in a house with 2 floors with her caretaker. One day, the police received a call from this old lady's house. The caretaker had been murdered. One detective was sent to investigate, where he found the caretaker's body on the 1st floor, vocal cords ripped out, lying in a pool of blood. The old lady was ruled out as a suspect because she was immobile, but the detective did note that this crime seemed familiar to how the widowed husband died years ago. He had suffocated in his sleep on the couch downstairs when the old lady was upstairs. After getting evidence from the 1st floor crime scene, the detective asked to look upstairs as well. The old lady refused at first, but he insisted and went up anyways. Everything seemed pretty normal until a shocking revelation came over him, and it sent chills down his spine. It was a detail that investigators had overlooked in the murder of the widow's husband as well. There is no phone on the 2nd floor. The detective then suddenly heard a noise, withdrew his weapon, and ran out of the room, only to find an empty wheelchair.
I have feelings for my coworker, but I'm engaged. I work in the medical field in a busy hospital. It feels like we've been short-staffed forever, and it never seems to improve. This leads to us having to work double shifts almost daily. The money's great, but I'm rarely ever home. Sometimes we even sleep at the hospital and don't go home for days at a time. The people I work with are amazing and almost like family. At the moment, I see them more than my actual family. We all look out for each other and we're super close. But some of us might be a little too close. There's this guy I work with named Jason that I've developed feelings for. When you're with someone almost 16 hours a day, I guess it's bound to happen. The problem is that I'm already engaged to my fiance at home. It started out innocent at first. Casual, light flirting here and there, so subtle at times I didn't even think anything of it. One of those situations where you start out as friends, but things keep progressing. I knew my relationship was in jeopardy when Jason and I started texting when we weren't working. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't stop the conversations. If I'm being honest, at times I would be the one to text first and take the conversation away from the friend zone. I haven't talked to my fiance about it and I'm scared to death too. I still love him and feel terrible that I have feelings for someone else, and I haven't even gotten to the worst part of it all.
I had just moved into my first apartment with my boyfriend. On move-in day, my boyfriend was working, so I started moving things alone. I noticed my neighbor, who is a man probably in his late 60s, was watching me the entire time, so I waved as I was going into my apartment. When I walked out of my apartment, he was standing outside my door and said, "I guess I should have helped you." That was the last encounter I had for about a week. My boyfriend had never seen this man, so I assumed he believed that I lived by myself. My next encounter, it was about 11 p.m. and I took my dog outside to go potty. I looked up and the same man was watching me from his blinds. I was extremely creeped out, so I looked away and tried to get my dog to hurry up. I looked at his blinds again and he was no longer there. About 30 seconds later, my dog started to freak out and lunge. So I looked and the man came outside. The first thing he said is, "I just wanted to let you know I walked into your apartment." My friend used to live here and I got confused. He stumbled over his words and got into his car. My boyfriend was in the living room before I took the dog outside, so I rushed inside to talk to him. He immediately started talking about it. He said this man opened the door and began to walk in, but they made eye contact. As soon as he saw my boyfriend, he hurried and shut the door and went to talk to me. I haven't had an experience since the last time I saw him, but from everything that has happened, it's easy to assume that this man thought I lived alone and was planning on waiting for me in my apartment. And that is the end of my first story time. I just want to take the time to apologize for taking so long. It is my first time and I didn't have content, but I promise to never ever do that again. I will always have part 2 ready for you guys. But if you have a story that you would like to share, just DM me on Instagram and I would love to make a video using your story. Alright, bye guys. Thank you for supporting me.